Hi, I'm Mark Miklich, Technical Product Manager for Small Character Technologies. In today's training video, we are going to discuss aiming and focusing for our laser systems. The processes that we discuss in this video for both focusing our laser on our product and also aiming on our product, so aiming our message where it's going to land on the product. This goes for all of our laser systems, whether it be a 10 watt CO2, 30 watt CO2, or even our fiber laser. It's the same process. Okay, before we get into setup on this, there's a couple things we have to cover that we're making the assumption are already complete. One is, in order to aim or focus the laser, the safety interlock has to be utilized. Okay, we can't enable that feature, which also enables us to mark, without utilizing the safety interlock. So if you have any questions on how to do that, you're going to want to review our safety interlock video that will tell you how to use that input properly prior to doing this. The other assumption we're making is you've got a message created. If we don't have a message in the system, we have nothing to aim with. So you'll want to watch our video on creating messages in our laser systems to make sure you've got something input prior to focusing and aiming on the product. Okay, we've got our system powered on and we're going to get ready to start focusing and aiming our system. Couple things we want to address first as well. One is if we're testing the laser out, so we're going to aim it, focus it, and ultimately we'll actually test mark on our product. When we're working around the marking head, even with the safety shroud, when we're testing in this scenario, it's a good idea to have safety glasses on, so make sure you've got Squid Ink supplied safety glasses for the laser systems that's specific to the wavelength of these lasers. The other thing I'll point out is when we're test marking, so after we're done aiming and focusing, even when we have that initiated, we want to make sure that our sensor or our encoder are unplugged so we don't accidentally trigger the system to mark while we're working in this area, again, while we're aiming and focusing. So make sure your sensor's unplugged if you have one, your encoder is unplugged, we've got our safety glasses on, then we can go ahead and start testing the system. Okay, before we start focusing and aiming on our product, one other variable to consider as well is placement of the product. If we're going to get set up on a specific product, we want to make sure that it's set up where it actually will be when we're running production. Okay, so make sure your material handling is addressed prior to doing this. And what we're going to do is have our product in a static position under the print head for initial testing. Make sure this is, roughly the location we're going to be in when you're running production. It'll make life a lot easier once we get this dialed in. All right, so we've got our product in place. We've got our laser roughly in place over the product. This is just going to be a kind of a generic top-down application. What we can do now is we've got our system turned on. We've got a message pulled up. Again, if you're not sure how to build a message, make sure you watch our video on message creation for our laser systems. You have to have a message loaded in order to aim on our product, okay? So once we've got that all addressed, all we have to do is come to our display here, and we're going to hit mark on, or we can also hit the start key, which is one of our 3 touch buttons here on the left-hand side of this panel. So if we hit mark on, the system is actually ready to mark right now if we wanted to do a test mark. Now that's not what we're doing, but I just want to point that out. Again, that's why we've unplugged our photocell, our sensor, our encoder, to make sure we don't accidentally trigger the system when we're doing this, okay? So the system is live, but before we actually test mark, we're going to focus the system and then use the aiming beam to get our positioning correct. So you'll see on our display here, we've got a few options. What we're going to be working with first is the focusing beam. That's going to make sure, or help us make sure, that our marking head is the proper distance from our product. You'll hear us refer to that as proper focal distance. So we're going to hit focusing beam on. That will enable our focusing beam, help us get it in the right position. Okay, with our focusing beam enabled, what you're going to see is we have a red dot and a red line. Now fortunately these are both landing on our product. It's not a big deal if it isn't. If the marking head is too far away, you might just see, you know, either our dot or our line somewhere off to the side on the conveyor. That's okay. But right now all this is telling us is that we're at the proper focal distance. What we need to do is get the red dot and the red line right on top of each other. It's really straightforward. All we need to do now is adjust the distance again of our marking head to our product. So we're actually a little too far away. So what we're going to do is drop the laser down and get closer to our product. So I'm going to use the vertical adjustment on my stand. Lower the system down. You'll see that line gets much more crisp when we get to the proper distance. You see we've got that dot right on top of that line. So that tells us immediately we are at the proper focal distance. One thing I'll point out too, some of you might be wondering up front, you know, what is that focal distance? We have a wide variety of lenses available that will dictate both the marking field and the focal distance. This is our standard lens that comes with every system. This is a 90 by 90 millimeter marking field, and it's about a 5 1/4 inch focal distance. So we're about 5 1/4 inches from our main focusing lens or marking head to the product. Regardless of the lens that you're using, it's going to be the exact same scenario. We've got the line and the dot that we just need to marry up together, but depending on the lens type, that focal distance might just be different. Again, it's still the same process regardless of what lens you're using. Okay, so now that we've got our system properly focused, the next thing we can do is utilize our aiming beam. So if we turn the aiming beam on, we'll move over to our product and you'll see what we get on our box. Okay, so here's our aiming beam. You'll see we've got a red box here. This box is actually the size of our total message. So we've got 2 lines of text. This is showing the total amount of space that that text is going to take up. It's a really nice feature. It shows you exactly how much room you need on your product. You'll see we also have a directional arrow that shows you what direction the system is expecting the product to move. So it's assuming we're moving the product from left to right. And we'll show you how to change that if it's necessary. So all we really need to do with this starting off is just get it placed where we want it on the product. So if we don't want it that close to the edge, maybe we want it moved over a little, we can go ahead and do that now. So I'm actually moving the system over, and then we're going to use our X adjustment on the stand. That's just moving it in and out, and let's say we just want to maybe center it a little bit more on our product. So simple as that as far as getting the placement of your mark on the box. Obviously there are going to be more variables involved with this, you know, regarding speed, delays, things of that nature, but at least tells us we will be marking in that area on the box. Okay, so now what we can do is disable our aiming beam. So we're going to turn aiming off. And now if we want, we could actually do a test print on our product. Again, there are a lot of variables now that might come into play. We've got pen parameters, which we'll discuss again in our message creation video. So we've got power outputs, product speeds, things of that nature to consider. But we could at least do a quick preliminary test on the product and see if we get the code in the correct orientation, make sure it's not inverted, reversed, anything like that, and we can address those variables moving forward. Okay, so if we want to do a test print on our product, we've got an option called manual marking. So if we hit that, we'll actually print on our box. Okay, so you'll see with our setup, we've got a nice clean print in the direction that we want it. A few things to consider here. One is if your product direction is different than what we are set up for. So you remember the directional arrow on our aiming beam. If we need that pointing the opposite way, we'll show you how to change the product direction. And also we'll show you how to, invert or reverse the text. So maybe your text was upside down or backwards. We'll show you just where those settings are, again, for this preliminary test. Okay, so if we need to make changes either to our direction or our product direction or the direction of our text, all we're going to do is enter our parameters page on our display. So again, this is our home screen, if you will. You'll see the parameters page is right over here. So if we click on that, you're going to see a lot of different options here, you know, line speed, marking repetitions, things of that nature. Again, we'll cover all that when we're actually hitting moving targets, when we're setting up on a moving conveyor. Again, this is just for getting our text set up properly and our direction set up properly in advance. Okay, so we're just going to look at a few options here. One is product direction. If your product is moving the opposite way that ours was, so ours is going left to right, let's say yours is moving right to left, all we need to do is check the reversed box here. And what you would see when we reinitiate the aiming beam is the arrow would be pointing the opposite direction. Okay, so it's really straightforward. If your text is inverted or reversed, when you do your test print, you've got two options here, X and Y direction. X is basically your reverse, if you will. Y is the inverse. So if we were to deselect one of these, it would either invert the text or reverse it. Okay, so pretty straightforward too is regarding how you use these, a little bit of trial and error to get it set up properly, but these are really the three primary settings we might be working with to get our text and product direction set correctly. Okay, there's one other parameter we could start to adjust right now. Let's say we're hitting the product a little too hard. Maybe with our box here, we've cut in a little too deep, or maybe not enough. And that's going to be the power output of the system. Now, this is a variable along with some other items in our pen parameters page that even if we get it set up on our static product, we likely will have to kind of recalibrate or adjust when we're hitting our moving product. So just be mindful of that. Again, we're just kind of getting set up on our static product right now. So if we want to adjust our power output initially, just to get us closer to where we want to be as far as appearance of the mark, we can go to our pen parameter page. So it's right above our parameters page. And what you'll see kind of by default, it's the first thing highlighted here is output power. So we're only at 25%, which is great for the chipboard box we're working with. Maybe you've got a plastic you're dealing with that we need to mark at a higher power output. Or maybe the power is too high and we just need to drop it down for our chipboard box. This is where we can adjust that, okay? Again, this is just kind of a preliminary setup to get it to look the way we want on our packaging. This is something we will likely have to adjust more when our product is actually moving. Okay, so that wraps up our video on just basic focusing and aiming and doing some test prints on our product. If you want to see more videos on our lasers or any of our other systems, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also don't hesitate to head over to squidink.com for even more information on our entire product line. Thank you.